consortium. There are 3 maternal child health consortiums in the state of New Jersey. There's the Northern, Central, and the South. And the consortium deals with maternal child health. So we have the immunization database, we have early intervention, we have postpartum depression. My department at the agency is perinatal addiction. So the word perinatal means before, during, and after childbirth. So women of childbearing years. So originally when this grant started a million years ago, it was supposed to be referrals for women that were pregnant or looking to get pregnant that had addiction issues to and education. The referrals don't really come, just giving you the long short of my job. It's kind of just morphed into an educational thing. And over the years, I come from the theory, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. So I just did whatever I wanted because I got a salary. So it's not like the state was going to come to me and be like, well, you should have just been sitting in your office doing nothing. Why did you go out to the school? So when they would come and do my evaluations, and they'd be like, why'd you go out to the school? And I'd be like, well, those girls are technically, childbearing age, and they're going, so shouldn't we be talking to them before they get pregnant? And they were like, oh, that's a good idea. So I kept doing things that they were, so I run smoking cessation groups also. Whether it's prison, I go into schools, I go into prisons, I go into rehabs, I go into methadone clinics, I go into basically anywhere that they will have me to come out and do education. So in the smoking cessation groups, it was supposed to be just women. That's what they were paying, the state was paying for. Not that they were paying for it. I mean, I'm on salary, so when I was allowing the husbands and the partners to come in, they're like, well, why did you do that? And I'm like, well, people are more effective at quitting smoking if your partner and everyone in the house is quitting smoking. And they were like, okay. So basically, they never told me to stop doing what I'm doing. So I do whatever I want as far as the education piece, and everyone's happy. So, and then we kind of morphed into an opioid grant and everything else. And then the opioid, because the governor on his way out dumped a lot of money on the agency to do professional opioid education, because obviously we had an epidemic. So I did professional opioid education for the last year, which was going out to doctors, hospitals, doing webinars. We're going out into the hospitals and doing grand rounds for doctors and residents, nursing schools, and doing professional education on opioids. So that grant ended, not that the opioids ended, but the grant ended for now, and now I'm back to what I was doing, and opioids is included in that. So like I said before, some of you came in, all I'm getting at this point is requests for the vaping information. Because, and I gotta tell you, I am literally, so if you see me keep turning around, it's because probably 3 weeks ago I put a vaping presentation together, and then had to change it, and then I change it, and I just keep changing it. So it's like my information is new to me as well, because things keep changing. And then last week, I don't know if you read the New York Times, but the Juul product, the Juul company, decided on their own to voluntarily, and there's stuff behind it, and I can predict what's behind it. The Juul company, on their own, voluntarily decided to take fruit and candy flavored Juul off the market and to stop marketing on social media. But between everyone in this room and being videotaped, the real reason is I know that they invested in another company. So to probably deflect from, so they'll just be like, oh, we'll be compliant over here. That's my prediction, is why they did that. So we'll get into it. And then I really, really like interactive, so I just don't want to stand up here. Sorry. Left? Why? That doesn't make sense. So this is what you guys were talking about. I wish I had a chair that could face you. So the Juul is what you're talking about. Just so you know, all of these things they're calling ENDS, electronic nicotine delivery systems. Okay? Whether they have nicotine in them or not, that's just a technicality, because they're showing, the CDC is showing, that within 3 months, 70% of teens are moving on to nicotine, even if they're originally using the juices with no nicotine in it. Nicotine, just like in tobacco products, nicotine is not the dangerous component in tobacco products. Tobacco itself, so when people argue with marijuana, marijuana is just a plant. What's tobacco? Just a plant. So what is harmful in tobacco products? The 7,000 chemicals that are in tobacco products. So that's what's dangerous. Not even necessarily the nicotine, although the nicotine is the most addictive substance on the planet. Because when you smoke something, that is the fastest route to get something into your system, into your body, into your bloodstream. It's about 5 to 7 seconds when you smoke that product gets into your system. Makes it more highly addictive. Even shooting up is about 15 seconds. So smoking is faster than shooting up. So So the faster it gets in, the more addictive the substance is. So the Juul got so much attention, my feeling is because it tricked everybody. Because parents got scared, because they were like, oh, I would know what a vape looks like, I would know what a modifier, I mean, some of those, the boxes, they're like pretty prominent, you would know what they look like. This, I think, scared parents. So that's why it got attention. It's not really any different than any of the other products that are on the market, it's just the way it looks. A lot of them are rechargeable, so a lot of them recharge in the wall or in the computers. This one just looked like a USB. And I should have brought the products with me. I don't bring them into the schools because kids would be swiping them off the tables, so I should have brought them in. It just looks like a little USB. It's about this big, and then that top piece pulls out, and the top piece plugs into the computer. No, I'm sorry, where the green is. Where the green light is, that plugs into the computer. Where the dark piece is, that is where the juices are. So these come already filled, pre-filled, with the juices in them. So the flavorings, the nicotine are already in them. Those they change out. The dark black piece is what gets changed out. The other piece, the bottom piece, recharges in the computer. So you were talking about the dabbing. So, I say so a lot. Remember the dance that all the kids were doing, the dabbing dance? And all parents thought this was funny, and it really wasn't funny, because here's the truth where that came from. When this generation of kids were little and they were in nursery school, we taught them to cough into their elbows. Because if you cough into your hands and then you touch a toy or you touch another kid, you're exchanging germs. So we taught these little kids to cough into their elbows. So when they dab, the term dabbing is when marijuana is like basically cooked down. So it's cooked down to a wax oil form. And the concentration of THC, so in the cannabinoid, the cannabis plant, you have CBD, which is legal in all 50 states. And CBD, there's some amazing stuff and studies going on. But understand this, and we can, if you want to get into marijuana, I don't want to, but if you want to get into the marijuana debate, you know, the term medical marijuana, it should not even be a term. Because for something to be medicinal, it means it cures something, and it also is regulated by the FDA. Since marijuana is not regulated, it's not legal federally, it's not regulated by the FDA. So even the medical dispensaries really have nerve calling it medical marijuana. Because it can alleviate pains, it can alleviate, but it's not THC that's alleviating. It's the component of the CBD that's eliminating, it's helping people with anxiety, that's helping increase hunger with and we're not talking about late-stage, end-stage people and cancer and everything else. They want to use opioids, have at it. Like, we're talking end-stage people. But we're talking young people that have aches and pains, and young people that have anxiety. CBD is possibly, and it's not regulated, so that becomes a whole other thing. But it's the CBD component of it. So THC is what gets you high off of marijuana, not CBD. THC in the weed of the 60s, 70s, and 80s was about 4 to 5% potency in marijuana. So somebody would sit around and smoke a joint, and then go out for the night, and you'd be like chill and mellow. Marijuana today is 60, 70, 80% potent in THC. Marijuana is classified in the drug, first of all, it's a Schedule I, which means it has no medical relevance, so it's not necessary, where opioids are not even a Schedule I, because there is a time and a place for opioids. Right, you're in a hospital, you have surgery, don't we need opioids? Of course, right? And there are people who use opioids successfully. You go into the hospital, you have surgery, you're on Percocet or morphine while you're in the hospital, and you leave and you go home with Motrin. Isn't that successful use of opioids? And then you move on to Tylenol, and then a couple weeks later you're off everything. That's successful use of opioids. So there's a time and a place for opioids. Not necessarily with, and the THC component in the marijuana is in the CBD is the problem as well. In the dabbing and the waxing, because when they boil it down and they scale it down, it becomes 90% potency. So it's classified as a hallucinogenic in the drug picture, in the drug scale, it's a hallucinogenic. That's where it's classified. So when these kids are saying nobody dies, it's not true. If you go on the Rocky, I'm not here to talk about marijuana, which is not why it's not in, I'll just tell you, it's the Rocky Mountain HIDTA. The Rocky Mountain Highway, Mountain Trafficking, it's a highway traffic, HIDTA, H-I-D-T-A. Rocky Mountain HIDTA. That's where all the reports are out, what's coming out of Denver. All of Colorado has not legalized marijuana. It's specifically more Denver. The outlying towns have not. Just like in New Jersey, there's a lot of towns that are getting ahead. I don't know what Mattawa and Aberdeen has done, but you may want to, all of you that I commend you for coming out, you may want to start going to municipal alliance meetings and your town council meetings. So I come from Howell. Howell already got on board, and we got a legislation passed. Well, no one was looking and paying attention, and no one was showing up. And the legislation says anything that's not legal on a federal level will not be legal in our town. So marijuana is not legal on a federal level, so it just means there will be no shops in town. But it's about changing the landscape and everything else. So when the HIDA reports came out, they're looking at emergency room, and that's a whole different presentation, but they're looking at emergency room reports, admissions, youth, toddlers, and there are emergency room admissions. There have been deaths due to marijuana because of the high THC levels. So due to hallucinations, due to the edibles, like one gummy bear is considered a serving. I don't know about the rest of you. If I'm eating gummy bears, not marijuana, but if I'm eating, I'm grabbing a handful and I'm not reading the back of the packaging to see how much is considered a serving. You're putting a handful in your mouth, right? People aren't realizing that when it has THC in it, and that's where the overdoses are coming from. Little kids are getting into their parents' edibles. 1 square Hershey's chocolate is a serving. Who eats 1 square Hershey's chocolate? I mean, that's what we should, but we're not doing that. So, the term dabbing, see why I need the PowerPoint to remember where it came from the high intensity of the levels of THC causes so much coughing, so they cough. So that's where that whole dance and that whole movement, and that parents think it's adorable and they're filming their 3-year-olds dabbing, it's coming from this. It's coming from coughing because the bronchial irritation due to the high concentration of THC in the electronics, in the vaping. So that's where that's coming from. Just understand that statistics are far behind before they get reported and everything else. So this is still from 2016. 12 and 100 high school students reported in 2016 they used electronic cigarettes in the past 30 days. 3 and 100 middle school students that used e-cigarettes in the last 100 days. The CDC reports, this is their speculation, that if students continue to smoke at the current rate, 5.6 million students below the age of 18 will die early from a smoking-related illness. 1 out of every 13 Americans below the age of 17 today will die of smoking-related illness. Now, vaping hasn't been around long enough for us to have any real relevant data. The CDC, the FDA started regulating vapes and all the products about 7 months ago. So does anyone realize that cigarettes are regulated by the FDA? Cigarettes are regulated. And all regulation means is consistency. It means that everywhere you go and buy a pack of Marlboro Lights, not that any you should be smoking, it's the same exact product from pack to pack. It means that FDA regulation means that I know if I go to CVS and buy Tylenol, and then I go to Walgreens, I'm not going to have an adverse reaction because I know how I react to Tylenol. So it means consistency in the product. So they started regulating cigarettes in 2009. But they left cigars off the ticket, and vapes were just starting to come on board, so they didn't get ahead of that as well. So, anyone remember clove cigarettes? Remember clove cigarettes? So they were banned, they took those off the market because they realized that flavorings were marketed towards kids because they were less harsh, they were easier for kids to smoke. So they were marketed towards kids. Cigars were not put onto the legislation with the FDA regulation, so there are still candy and fruit-flavored cigars on the market. And again, those are marketed towards kids. Because I personally don't know any 40-year-old men, after a nice steak dinner, go out back with a glass of brandy and go, I'm dying for a grape cigar. That would just top this night off. Right? They're not smoking flavored cigars. The flavorings kids are using for blunts, for packing with marijuana, and just if they're smoking them, the flavorings make it less harsh. But the flavorings on the vapes, and the government knows that, are being marketed towards the kids. So now the FDA is regulating them, and the only thing that differentiates a cigar from a cigarette, anyone knows how you classify a cigar and a cigarette? Cigars are wrapped in tobacco leaves, cigarettes are wrapped in paper. So even the small, black and milds, those are cigars because they're wrapped in tobacco leaves. They still have high levels of nicotine and just as many chemicals. Okay? A large cigar has about 35 milligrams of nicotine. Granted, you're not inhaling, but a trace amounts of smoke, even when you're smoking it and you're rolling around in your mouth, your gums are porous. Just like with chewing tobacco, that's where it sits for the nicotine to get absorbed into your system. So that the nicotine is still getting absorbed into your system. So now they're studying it and they're finding what is in these products. As of right now, with the vaping, they're finding higher levels of formaldehyde in vaping products than there are in traditional cigarettes. Formaldehyde, we know they embalm dead bodies in. They're also finding metal particles because that coil gets heated up really hot and it's little tiny pieces, fragments are breaking off and they're settling in the lungs. And even if, which I don't believe it is, even if it is truly just water vapor, enough water settles in the bottom of your lungs and what happens? You get pneumonia. And then you have all the chemicals sitting in the water as well, and that is an issue as well. So we don't have the long-term data on this yet. Smoking, how long did it take for smoking to come out being bad for your health? Till 1993, all but one CEO of all the tobacco industry sat in front of Congress and testified with their right hands in the air, hands on the Bible, swore that nicotine was not addictive, even though they knew it was. But they swore before Congress till 1993 that nicotine wasn't addictive. And the argument, again, when we're working with kids, we know, well, nobody dies from vaping. Well, nobody dies from smoking a cigarette, right? We don't know, I'm not sure it's happened, but no one has died from smoking a cigarette. It's the long-term health results of long-term smoking and the effects that it has on the body. So the same thing with the vape, it's like what's going to happen down the line. So the tobacco use among high schoolers, any product, 19.6. Males obviously are a little bit higher. E-cigarettes, 11.7. Cigarettes, hookahs, and cigars. And then smokeless tobacco would be, and that's probably not in this area, but that's the Midwest and the South. That's chewing and spit and all that. Although it's some of the sports kids are doing it, because again, they think the smoke. And that's the other thing too. Keep in mind that smoke in any form is a carcinogen. Whether it's weed, whether it's tobacco, whether it's in the vaping products, smoke is a carcinogen. If you went out front and took some grass, literal grass out of the ground, and smoked it long enough, it would be it's a human carcinogen. Smoke is not good for our bodies, it's not meant to be there. So some factors associated with youth tobacco, environment, media, and their peers. The media is so promoting the hell out of this, and the FDA's got to get on top of it. Mental health, depression, anxiety, stress, and this alleviates a lot of those feelings, just like the marijuana does for these kids. So a lot of the kids that, even in their early years, that were on ADHD medications, and then you don't have to admit it, but a lot of parents, I have a lot of friends, oh, my kid's been on these pharmaceuticals for too long, I got to get them off. But remember, pharmaceuticals are regulated. So no matter what you think about the pharmaceutical industry, at least it's regulated so you know what's in it. When these kids go off these medications, they turn to marijuana. Because marijuana gives them the same effect that their medication does. It helps them focus. It calms them down. It makes them able to do the work that they need to do. So they're turning to the marijuana in lieu of their pharmaceuticals. And the biggest problem is we don't know what is in every batch of marijuana because it's not regulated. And it's just Joe Schmo drug dealer that's growing his weed. And it's not, like I said, it's not the weed of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. It is not natural anymore. It is not from God anymore. They have so manipulated the crap out of these plants. So they're only supposed to bud once a year, marijuana plants. They're budding 2 and 3 times a year. So they genetically, modified these plants as well. The pesticides that are on them, again, they're not regulated by the FDA. So God knows what they're spraying them with. The fertilizers, God knows what they're putting on them. Anybody have vegetable gardens at their house? Right? Me too. I know that my dogs pluck the tomatoes off the plants. I spray my plants with garlic and dish soap and lemon juice. Because if the kids aren't going to wash it, I don't have to worry about the dogs are eating it, I don't worry about it, no one has to wash the products. They're using whatever they want on these products. So factors that are associated. In 2016, a report done by the National Institute of Drug Abuse found that half the students in the nation believe e-cigarettes are flavorings alone. They don't realize, and because we're talking about kids. You know, kids' brains, kids' brains. Why do you think the government set originally the drinking age to be 21 and the tobacco purchase age and the vape purchase age to be 21? Because I get the argument, you know, my kid can go to war at 18, but they can't buy a beer till they're 21. I don't get it. I don't think anyone's kid should be going to war, but they're two separate issues. Why do you think 21 was set as the age? Brains are undeveloped. Thank you. Girls' brains, what we have found in recent years, when a girl's brains fully developed. Do you have any idea? 24 to 27, correct. Boys? 45. That's my joke! You stole my joke! Come on! That's my joke! I use that all the time. Sorry, guys. It's 21 to 20, 24 to 20, girls are 21 to 24, boys are 24 to 27. So they set the use age at 21 because originally they thought that's when brains fully develop. The last lobe of the brain to develop is the frontal lobe. That controls impulse control and decision making. Think about when we add alcohol to an underdeveloped brain that can't make good decisions and can't control their impulses. Think of all those stupid YouTube videos that you watch or your kids are watching. Who is in them? Teenage boys. Okay? There are no 50-year-old women jumping off the roof of a house into a swimming pool to see if they can make it. Never seen one. I'm sure they're out there, but you don't see them. It's adolescent boys because they make dumb decisions. Think about yourselves. How many bad decisions in your life, because no one's made any bad decisions, but if you did, how many bad decisions were made at Starbucks? Not too many. How many were made at a bar after a few drinks? I've got this great idea, right? It's after a few drinks that we make dumb decisions. Not all of us, but some of us. So that teenage brain, so we're adding these addictive components to them, nicotine being the most addictive component. Alcohol, for those of you that believe in drinking in the basement, it's safer than, you know, at least I know where my kids are, I'm taking the keys away, I can control it. What message are you giving your kids? It's okay to drink. So you think that adolescent brain is going to go, okay, I can drink in my basement, but I can't drink in your basement, right? You're also telling your kid the law is for everybody else but you. You're breaking the law, and that's okay. C, there's a number of other bad things that come about besides drinking and driving, right? STDs, unwanted pregnancies, unwanted sex, violence, other accidents falling down. So there's other things that can happen, and it's giving the message to kids that it's okay to use. For the last 30-plus years, University of Washington does a study with high school seniors, and they talk to kids that have problems with alcohol and kids that don't, meaning high school seniors are probably going to experiment with alcohol, but they don't have absenteeism, their grades are fine, there's no problems associated with it. And then they look at kids that have problems associated, they've been suspended, they're kicked off teams. When they ask the kids that don't have alcohol-related issues, what keeps you from drinking problematically? Fear of the law, fear of bodily harm, or fear of your parents? Parents. And it's not that my parents are going to beat my butt. It's fear of disappointing your parents. Think about your own kids. You know, I have much older teenagers, young adults. So they're really hard to control at this point. If I say I'm pissed, they don't live with me. They just won't call me for months, right? On end. They just won't, I mean, they're in college, so they just won't call back. If I say I'm so hurt and disappointed, they're like stalking me because they want my approval so badly. Hearing I'm disappointed scares the crap out of them. So going against family values and family norms, so putting it out there, this is what our family expects of you. There is no drug use in this family. There is no drinking underage in this family. You're setting really good values for those kids, and you're giving them parameters. It also gives them a good foundation. It gives them a toolkit. I always say, because I teach a course called Strengthening Families, if you've ever heard of it. And it's a 14-week evidence-based program recognized by the World Health Organization. I've been doing it over 20 years. I've done it in the richest communities. I've done it in prisons in Newark. And it works no matter where you use it, which is wonderful about the program, because wherever your parenting is, whether it's here, here, or here, it just takes it up a notch. And it helps families communicate. And where was I going with strengthening families? Oh, so we know that families that have dinner together 3 or nights a week, those are protective factors. Families, because what does it mean? What does having dinner together have to do with anything? Right. If we're having dinner together 3 nights a week, it would be really awkward to be in silence. So even if we start off silent, eventually we're going to start talking. So the more we're communicating, and I've been in this field a long time, and people go, well, what's the magic answer? I don't know. I'd be a billionaire if I knew what the answer was. But I can tell you, I like my C words. I like communication. I like consistency. Because those at least are protective factors with our kids. Oh, the toolbox. So I talk to these families, you got to give your kids a toolbox. If I gave everyone, if you're an electrician, just shut up, I don't want to hear about it. If I gave everyone in this room the task of changing out all the light switches in this whole room, or you can't leave tonight, until you switch out, some of you would start to panic. Like, I have no idea how to switch out a light switch. That's terrifying. But if for 14 weeks I said, okay, first night, here's a red, shiny Craftsman toolbox. First night, I'm going to give you a surge protector. Second night, I'm going to give you a voltmeter. I'm going to give you screwdrivers. I'm going to do diagrams. At the end of 14 weeks, wouldn't you be less scared to switch out the light switches? Just assuming I know how to teach that, which I don't, right? You'd feel better about it. So sending our kids out in the world with no tools is really terrifying. So when you role play and you give them strategies and you talk about, okay, so let's role play. You're at a party and someone asks. You got to have an answer like this, because nobody wants to look uncool, and nobody wants to be unready. So there are some answers. My mom's crazy and she'll drug screen me. I can't, because she drug screens. I drug screen my kids regularly. They didn't use, but I drug screened them regularly, just because they were able, it was almost a gift to them, because they'd be like, oh, the crazy lady at home is going to drug screen me, so I need to be clean because she'll catch me. They can say they're allergic. Think about this. With all these peanut allergies, if somebody came to your house and the kid was like, you know, you want a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and the kid's like, I'm allergic, you wouldn't be like, come on, just half the sandwich, you can do this. Allergic is a really good tool to use, because especially it's a trigger word now. No one pushes it after you say you're allergic. But there's other things kids can use. There's safe words. They can call you with a safe word. You know, Mom, there's pineapples at this house. And then you start calling them back, and you're like, I'm coming right now to get you. No questions asked, I'm coming to pick you up. But it's a way for them, and they're like, oh, crazy lady just called me. I got to get out of the house now. I got to go. Give them a way to get out. You know, we don't have to have this conversation tonight. Go home, you're safe in your bed, go to sleep. Tomorrow, let's talk about your choices and friends, or where you're hanging out, or whatever's going on. So I'm off target. So the National Institute of Drug Abuse found that teens believe e-cigarettes are flavoring alone. More than 13% of teens said they didn't know what the ingredients were, and only 13.2 knew that there was nicotine in e-cigarettes, vapes, electronics.
Cigarettes and marijuana have been used for centuries, but only recently has the process of vaporizing these substances become popular. So what does science have to say about this technology? Is it actually better for you? When smoking normally, the heat from fire causes substances to change from a solid state to a vapor. In cigarettes, this releases nicotine, which is absorbed into your bloodstream through the lungs, causing increased heart rate, constricted blood vessels, release of dopamine in the brain, and feelings of alertness. But because nicotine is a stimulant, once it's no longer present, you crash and crave more, which ultimately leads to addiction in many people. In the case of marijuana, the active component THC is aerosolized and follows the same pathway into your body, but with different effects, which we explain in our video, Your Brain on Marijuana, here. Smoking only takes 6 seconds for the active compounds to reach your nervous system, unlike chewing tobacco or eating edible marijuana, which takes much more time. But you have to inhale smoke in the process. This smoke consists of partially burned particles, which creates tar in your body, has cancer-causing effects, flattens teeth, and destroys taste buds. This is where vaping comes in. If you can heat the active components enough to become aerosolized without starting a combustion reaction with the other compounds, then you theoretically get fast effects without the damage of smoke inhalation. Vaping typically involves a glass or metal chamber which has an electrical current passing through it. This way it can heat to a controlled temperature, creating a vapor with minimal combustion, meaning you inhale much less smoke. For marijuana users, vaporizers have become popular as the plant material can be heated to a specific temperature, usually between 185 to 210 degrees Celsius, allowing just the THC-containing vapor to be extracted. For e-cigarettes, using a liquid solution instead of dry tobacco has become popular. This e-liquid contains water, nicotine, a base, and occasionally flavorings, and vaporizes at a much lower temperature. But this is where things get tricky. The e-liquid contains a base similar to that used in cosmetics and food, which helps maintain moisture without creating sogginess. One common base called propylene glycol, which is used in theatrical smoke, is known to cause irritation to the eyes and respiratory infections. So what's going to happen after prolonged inhalation in e-cigarettes? Scientists are still studying these effects, and even though in America the FDA has given the seal of approval, much is still unknown. E-liquid can also differ greatly between manufacturers with barely any regulation for additives. Some have been found to contain diacetyl, a chemical that is known to give butter its buttery taste. Inhalation of this chemical can lead to scarring in the lungs known as popcorn lung, named after hundreds of workers inhaled the chemical in a microwavable popcorn factory and suffered irreversible lung damage. This is an example of how the lack of quality control in e-cigarettes should be a significant concern. But current evidence does indicate that vaporizers administer nicotine with far less adverse effects due to decreased carcinogenic products and smoke inhalation. But less harmful does not mean safe. E-cigarettes with added flavorings such as blueberry or grape have been found to contain other harmful chemicals, and secondhand smoke is still an issue. Exhaled particles from vaporizers known as ultrafine particles are known to affect pulmonary health. Others are worried that because these e-cigs are deemed healthier, that they're becoming more appealing for young people. A study reported that continued use of e-cigarettes for teens in grades 6 to 12 had increased from 6% to 20% over 3 years. On the other hand, much of the information we have on the adverse effects of smoking comes from long-term studies with cancers appearing much later in life. Since vaporizer use is relatively new, we simply don't have the same access to longitudinal studies. So we'll wait to see what the future brings. Special thanks to Audible for supporting this episode and giving you a free audiobook at audible.com/ASAP.
So popcorn lung. So has anyone heard of that term before tonight? Did you know that that's where it came from? No. So it's really interesting. It literally came from a popcorn factory. So these workers that worked, it was about 30 years ago, in the room that sprayed the butter flavoring on the microwave popcorn were inhaling the butter flavoring, and they were getting small pock marks on their lungs, and they were getting holes that were hard to seal up. They would sew them up and then they would reopen again. They were also getting bronchitis and allergies and asthma. And what they determined was these people were inhaling the butter flavoring. The butter flavor, you can go back to eating your butter flavored popcorn. It was approved by the FDA for ingestion. Our stomach can break down a lot of stuff, right? We have all that stomach acid. You can eat nuts, you can eat popcorn. If you put any of that stuff in your lungs, you would die, right? Because the lungs are very fragile and they can't metabolize and work those things. The stomach digests with all that stomach acid. So the flavorings that are in all the vaping products were approved by the FDA for ingestion. For candies, for cakes, for cookies, for drinks, Kool-Aid, all those flavored drinks. It was approved for ingestion, so safe for your stomach. So they fixed the butter flavor and they put those masks, those respirators, on the people in the popcorn factory, and it solved the problem. But now, they're in the vapes. So that's what they were approved for. They were not made for these vaping devices. So it was for ingestion into the stomach. So they're finding short-term, in a very short period of time, young kids are presenting to the emergency departments with this popcorn lung. So kids not understanding. So that's in the short term. And like I said, and like the video said, long term, we don't know what the effects are. We don't know what the effects are. So when I run a smoking group, one of the things I do is I have a carbon monoxide detector. And it's for breathing into. So I have people blow in the breathalyzer, and it's for motivational, not for punitive. So as the weeks go by and they're quitting, they can see their carbon monoxide, because when you smoke tobacco, you're heating up the plant to such a high level, just like we have carbon monoxide detectors in our house for anything that produces heat. The furnace, the stove, the water heater, you're burning fuel at such a high temperature, it causes carbon monoxide. So but people that just vape, they're not showing carbon monoxide in their bloodstream. But that doesn't mean that it's safe, just because they're not showing one thing. And that's what I really push in the groups, even when people are in there just vaping. Just because you don't have carbon monoxide, well, the people that are smoking tobacco don't have metal particles in their lungs. So you're switching one out for another. It doesn't mean that it's safe just because you don't have the same effects. And smoking, we have 100 years of evidence behind us. So these are some of the side effects. Irritation of the eyes, blurry vision, wounds and burns in case of e-cigarettes explosion, mouth and airways irritation, cough, increased airway resistance. Remember, we don't have anyone who's been smoking vapes for 20 years because they haven't been around for 20 years. Heart and circulation, chest pain, increased blood pressure, increased heart rate, stomach, vomiting, nausea, and pain. That's probably due to the nicotine overdosing. If anyone ever smokes or has smoked, if you've ever smoked too many cigarettes in a row or smoked too fast and you get nauseous, dizzy, diarrhea, that's nicotine overdose. Okay? Yeah.
I read an article the other day in a concert that something about one cup is much more.
I think, yeah, it's hard to determine, but they're basically saying that one cartridge of nicotine, of vaping is equivalent to about 20 packs of cigarettes. And keep something in mind. That's one cartridge. So keep a couple things in mind. When people show me the juices and it says like 3 milligrams, because it'll say 3 milligrams of nicotine in the juices. Each cigarette has about 3 milligrams, give or take. But like a Marlboro Red has about 3 milligrams of nicotine in it. That's per cigarette. When I say to people, since there's no FDA labeling on the bottle, is that per dropper? Is that per bottle? Is that per 2 drop? We have no idea. Like even this bottle of water I'm drinking has on the back of it how many servings, how much calcium, right? Everything's labeled out. You know what's in it. So we don't know what is in these things, and it differentiates from product to product. The other thing is that they say they're manufactured in the United States. The components, most of them, are manufactured in China. What is China's regulation on manufacturing? There is none. There is none. So the products, the components are made in China, then they're shipped here, they're put together here, so they're able to say manufactured in the United States. So that's a whole other piece to it too. And well, you know, the reason that the tobacco industry knew they were losing customers at huge rates. We're at the lowest rate smoking rates have ever been. New Jersey is one of the lowest states for smoking as well. We're at the lowest rates. They knew they were losing. They had to tap into something else. Most of the vape companies are owned by the tobacco industry. So they use them as alternatives, like for quitting smoking. What they have found is people aren't quitting smoking, they're adjunct. So they're using them even though it's illegal. And when the Clean Air Act came into place in 2009, anywhere that you could not smoke traditional tobacco, you can't vape. So I don't know how ballsy any of you are, but like if I'm standing, you know, in a movie theater bathroom or wherever, and I see someone, I'm like, excuse me, you know, that's illegal. And I usually am not met with a very friendly face back at me. But the truth is, I choose to not smoke, so why should I be exposed to secondhand smoke, which we don't know what's going to be from the secondhand smoke. And I don't have little kids, but if anybody does, I would certainly be vigilant about anyone smoking in front of my little kids. Just like with a cigarette, I wouldn't let anyone smoke a cigarette near my little kids. And kids and adults in airport bathrooms, in airplane bathrooms, in movie theaters. Kids are doing it in the back of the classroom, and they're just blowing it into their hoodies like this, and the smoke dissipates. And it's virtually undetectable because it has like no smell to it. So they're doing it, so even adults are doing it in the workplace, so it's increasing smoking use. Where think about this, like my grandmother smoked. She would sit at her desk, she was an accountant, she'd sit at her desk all day and smoke. Think how much they smoked back then, it was disgusting, right? So the Clean Air Act came about, and one of the reasons the Clean Air Act came about was it would cause an environmental change. An environmental change, according to CADCO, which is the County Alliance Drug Committee of America, Anti-Drug Coalition of America. So one of the things that they determined was environmental change is better than, because there's like 10, 15 people in this room, right? I'm talking to you. That's not the best spent money for government funds. The best way is to pass legislation. Because when the Clean Air Act came in, so there was a number of things that they did with the tobacco industry to cut people's smoking rates down. They increased the tax, right? Now when we're talking about marijuana, they're saying all the taxes. I ask all of you, where's the tobacco tax? Where's the Atlantic City taxes? Where's the lottery taxes? Did any of your taxes go down since all these things got taxed so high? None of us are potholes getting filled in, but none of us are personally. So I argue with people, which I'm trying not to, with the marijuana. Don't get too excited about tax rates, because I don't know how much we're going to actually feel it on a personal level. So they increased the taxes, because that put people that were smoking 2 packs of cigarettes out of reach for 2 packs a day. They eliminated vending machines. Remember the vending machines? Because that was easy access. They raised the purchase age to 19, then they raised it to 21, which put it out of hopefully more kids' hands, and then the Clean Air Act. So that meant that we couldn't sit in the movie theaters. So think about, like, I'm really old. So in college, you'd sit in a bar and you'd smoke, sitting in your cute little dress, and you'd smoke all day, all night sitting at the bar. Now, you go out to a bar, you've got a cute little dress on, it's, not that you're wearing a cute little dress. You go out to, it's cold, people aren't going to go out as often to smoke because you got to go get your coat from coat check and you got to go outside, right? So it reduced the amount of smoking that people did without people realizing that it was happening to them. So it reduced, they did it to, part of it was to reduce smoking. And for the rest of us not being exposed to smoke that choose not to smoke. You can answer questions at any time. I'm the only one saying it. You're all nodding at me, which is very nice, which is better than doing teens, because believe me, when we have teens, it's get off your phone, stop talking, pay attention, look at me. So nicotine is highly addictive. Vaping liquids contain additives such as propylene glycol, can form carcinogenic compounds when they're heated. Didactyl, a chemical used to flavor some liquids, has been linked to popcorn lung. And Dr. Mark Rubenstein, we just don't know what the risks of inhaling all these flavorings and dyes are, and what we do know is pretty scary, hence the popcorn lung. So the dabbing is increasingly popular. They're vaping alcohol. And not that that's not scary enough, but think about our body has a natural defense. When you drink too much, you vomit, hopefully. And that prevents you from dying from alcohol poisoning, because alcohol is a depressant, so it slows down your breathing, it shuts off your gag reflex, it slows down your heart, and that's why people die from overdosing on alcohol. When you're inhaling it, your body doesn't have the same defenses, because there's nothing in your stomach for it to throw up. The other thing is that when you're drinking, you tend to get tired and you feel yucky, so you tend to slow down in your drinking as you're going through the night. And this is what happens with the energy drinks with the kids. This is why it's so dangerous. As an adult, you kind of know how many drinks you can have and then you've had too much. Like, I know I've had that second drink and like, that's it. Can't go another one because I know how I act after that second drink. They don't have years of experience of drinking behind them, right? So the energy drinks are counteracting the effects of the alcohol. So the alcohol's bringing them down, the energy drinks with the caffeine are bringing them up. So they are able to drink at higher rates that they would normally be drinking at, where they would have passed out at some point, but the caffeine is keeping them up and counteracting the slowing down of the alcohol. So that's why the Four Locos were taken off the market a few years ago, and they came back, and I have no idea why. I think they changed the chemistry to it. But, so the inhaling alcohol, like I just said. No, I don't know where. Honestly, probably the internet. It's completely illegal, so I'm sure the internet. They have found a way. And every time we get ahead of these kids, they find another thing to do. The high nicotine content in Juul, the availability, they're known for the nicotine buzz, which is why kids end up moving to nicotine, even if they're starting with just the juices, with the flavorings, and I don't mean just. With the flavorings and the juices, they move on to the nicotine because maybe they'll take a puff of somebody else's. And once you get a little taste of that buzz of nicotine, because nicotine is a stimulant, and it kind of feels good. It switches your brain on, and you're more on, and you're like, I like that, so they start adding it. That's why 70% within 3 months move on to that. The money spent on e-cigarette advertising rose from $6.4 million to $115, and that's 2014. We're 2019 basically now. So how that's changed. Go on and Google. So remember the old Virginia Slims commercial, the long, slim Virginia Slims, and it was a long, thin woman, and she was in a long, flowy dress, and she's leaning back, and it gave you the illusion like you're going to be long and skinny and sexy if you smoke Virginia Slims. The ads for e-cigarettes exactly mimic the old tobacco ads. The advertising is exact. You can line them face to face. Like the Marlboro Man, there's one that looks like the Marlboro Man. And we know how he died, lung cancer. So Joe Camel, remember, was taken off the market because it was marketed towards, it was too cartoonish, it was marketed towards kids. There's cartoon characters. I need to put more advertising on to show you, because you just get angry. You get angry that the tobacco industry found another way to get at our kids. We thought we did a good job with tobacco, which we did, and they found a new way to get at our kids and find a whole nother generation. Take back your freedom. Think about it. What does that say to a teenager who's already feeling like my parents are restricting my freedom? I mean, those are trigger words to a kid, right? Take away your car, you're taking away their freedom. You ground me, you take my phone, you're taking away my freedom. Freedom, independence, rebellion, and that's what they're selling. And celebrities are on smoking. It's the next generation of cigarette for the next generation of addicts. And there's a lot that the StillTheSmoke.org, that's the name of the organization, isn't telling you about vaping. So be careful about the information you get on the internet, because remember that these vapes are owned by the tobacco industry. So most of the reports you're reading are from the tobacco industry. The vaping companies are writing. You really have to dig. When you read information, you really want to look at peer-reviewed articles that are really solicited by the legitimate. So the American Medical Association, the CDC, you want to look at those World Health Organizations, legitimate organizations that are in it for the right reasons. Advertising deliberately focused on making vaping very appealing to middle and high school. If you start young, they have a customer for life. They come in very bright colors. They're very cool looking. They are very cool and interesting looking. And the little holders that hold them are very cool and interesting. They're appealing to our kids.